Hi, welcome back to Thursday Night Poetry. I am getting down to the wire here on Thursday, September 18th. It's almost midnight, but I wanted to come on and do a Thursday Night Poetry Hispanic Heritage Month edition. So this week it was the kickoff for Hispanic Heritage Month. And traditionally, Hispanic Heritage Month goes until mid-October. I usually extend it a couple more weeks and just go all the way through to Dia de los Muertos on November 2nd. So I'm going to try to come on Thursday nights from now until November 2nd. I don't know what day of the week that falls under, but I'm going to try to do a poetry Thursday until then. And maybe some days I'll read from a collection of poetry. For tonight, I want to keep it simple, and I'm going to go to my good old Loteria cards. These are Loteria poems by Esteban Rodriguez, published by Texas Review Press. I absolutely love this little packaging. These are Loteria poems packaged like Loteria cards, like a deck of cards. And I love the packaging here. They were published in 2023 and reissued in 2024. So these are the deck of cards I'm just going to shuffle. So in a Loteria game, maybe one day I'll actually do a Loteria game while I'm doing this, but I'm not going to tonight. But in Loteria, you win when you get 4 in a row. And there's different ways of winning. The traditional ones are like horizontal, diagonal, vertical, and then there's like 4 corners, and then there's like the 4 in the middle, and then there's a full card, and so there's an X, there's an L. Like, people get kind of creative and fun. Like, sometimes it's just a matter of like passing the time and just having a good time. So it's fun. It's fun to play. But for tonight, I'm just gonna draw 4 cards, and let's just pretend like those are the 4 cards that would win me a loteria. I have cards, but I don't have one with me, so I'm not gonna choose the 4. I'm just gonna draw randomly. So, like, just going to pick 4. This one. This one. This one. One more. Trying not to look down. Okay, I got 4. And maybe I'll just try to connect them with 4, like each with like either a book or a poetry collection. That might be kind of fun. Okay, so these are the 4, and then I'm gonna shuffle these 4 and these. Okay, first one. La Estrella. This is the poem on the back of La Estrella. La Estrella is the star. Don't know. Helps? Okay. And all of these poems are written by Esteban Rodriguez. Okay. With his shirt unbuttoned, you see the ink across your cousin's body, the eagle, cactus, your aunt's name, and the name of an ex, who was now referred to as puta. And when you see the stars on his shoulders, large and vaguely 3-dimensional, you can't stop thinking how they resemble La Estrella in Loteria. A card your cousin, this cousin of all people, won with one night, claiming some $10 in quarters, nickels, dimes, and you remember how clothed he was then, how the tattoos he did have were hidden beneath his white tee, so that not even his mother seated next to him knew, what he was scarring on his chest, that it was her name on his ribs, bold, cursive, and perfect, even if it wasn't complete. La Estrella. I'm trying to think of a poetry collection or a book that I can tie this to. Okay, so the book that I'm going to connect to La Estrella is this one, The Bluest Sky. So La Estrella in the Loteria card has the colors blue and like white or silver, and so this matches perfectly. And The Bluest Sky was written by Christina Diaz Gonzalez. She also wrote The Red Umbrella, and in this cover, the little paper boats are like stars in the sky. Let me read the inside flap of this book. This is a middle grade novel, and it says, there are two versions of Hector, the public and the private. It's the only way to survive in communist Cuba, especially when your father was exiled to the U.S. and labeled an enemy of the people. Hector must always be seen as a fierce supporter of the regime, even if that means loudly rejecting the father he still loves. But in the summer of 1980, those two versions are hard to keep separate, no longer able to suppress a public uprising. The Cuban government says it will open the port of Mariel to all who wish to leave the country, if they can find a boat, but trying to leave comes at a price. Those who want to flee are denounced as traitors by family and friends. There are violent acts of repudiation, and no one knows if they will truly be allowed to leave the country or not. So when Hector's mother announces that she wants the family to risk everything to go to the United States, he is torn. He misses his father, but Cuba is the only home he has ever known. All his dreams and plans require him to stay. How can he leave all that behind? In a summer of heat and upheaval, danger and deadly consequences, Hector's two worlds are on a collision course. Will he survive the impact? And then about the author, Christina Diaz Gonzalez based the story on the experiences of her relatives and her research into the thousands of other Cubans who came to the United States during the Mariel boat lift. She is the award-winning author of several books, including The Red Umbrella, Thunderous Whisper, Moving Target, Return Fire, Concealed, and Invisible. Her books have received numerous honors, including an ALA YA LSA Best Fiction for Young Adults designation, the Florida Book Award, the Nebraska Book Award, and the International Latino Book Award. Christina lives in Miami with her husband, sons, and a dog that can open doors. How funny. I thought this was middle grade, but this is probably more YA. I'd always been saving it for middle grade, March, and now I'm thinking I should have picked it up for August. So, yeah, I got this at a local children's bookstore, and so I thought it was YA, but I thought it was middle grade, but it's probably more YA. So that is La Estrella. El Soldado. This one has a year, 2007. March with summer's heat already occupies the air, and in the middle of the yard, seated in the middle of your uncle's, aunts, your cousin smiles, babysits a Bud Light because he can, because 19 is just a number. And his deployment is near. 19, your uncle jokes, and already you get to travel the world. And because he knows that the world is filled with promises of IEDs, ambitious shrapnel, and severed limbs, he adds, we're proud of you, mijo, proud of what you're about to do. But you wonder if you can be proud of him too, if after accepting without question what it means to invade a country, you can accept he's a year older than you, that your body is no different than his, that in a few months, while he's trudging through rubble and sand, taking position in a bummed out house, you'll be walking a new campus, hopeful that at the end of each class, you're the one step closer to figuring the world out. Okay. I think the book that is first coming to mind is The the collection of short stories by Oscar Casares titled Brownsville. I have this, it's in my living room because I have all my short story collections in my living room by the fireplace, and I just like to have them all stacked up for fireside reading. So fireside, right? Like just a week is like the only, there's one week in the year where it's actually cold enough to turn on the fireplace. Anyway, that's where the short story collections live. And the reason why I'm thinking about Oscar Casares is a collection of short stories titled Brownsville is because those stories are so evocative of the place. I live near Brownsville, and they are so like you can almost just feel Brownsville when you're reading those stories. They feel so of the place. There's such a strong sense of place in those stories. And Brownsville, there's a Fort Brown in Brownsville, and so I think one of the short stories is in the Fort Brown area. I'm not one who knows a lot about military history, but Fort Brown is a very well-known historical military post. And yeah, when I think of soldiers and literature, I think of the border because that's where I see them. I live on the border, and I usually see soldiers right on the border, on both sides. You see the Mexican soldiers on the Mexican side, and you see the American military on the American side. And Fort Brown is right on the border, like by the bridge. So that's kind of how I'm picturing it all. El Soldado, I'm linking it to Oscar Casares' collection, Brownsville. La Sirena, the mermaid. La Sirena. Though in the other room your aunts speak loud enough for you to hear, and after chatting about novelas, recipes, how hot summer will be this year, the real chisme begins, and they talk about your cousin and her breasts, how large they've become, how the good genes in the family have finally kicked in, and in their back and forth and back, some aunts are proud, speak as if she has accomplished something they have not, while others stay silent, express with every passing minute their discontent, that unhappiness that when they were young they weren't endowed with such a perfect chest. And because your mother is one of them, you remember how you walked in on her once bent over with nothing but underwear, and how upon seeing her breasts, sagging, wrinkled, more aged than you had expected, you turned away, and have kept turning every time she crosses her arms, or when her nightgown reveals cleavage, or when on the beach she adjusts her one piece, lets it snap again and again against her ribs, as if she knows that no matter how tight her suit fits, she can make anything feel good on her skin. So this one, the first book that comes to mind is actually the YA book that I read for August that I absolutely loved, and that is Natalia Sylvester's Breathe and Come Back from 10. And the reason why is because our protagonist in that short story, not the short story, our protagonist in that YA novel, Veronica, she wants to be a mermaid. And so that is why I'm linking them, and I highly recommend Natalia Sylvester's Breathe and Come Back from 10. Lastly, El Paraguas, the umbrella. El Paraguas. Then the desert begins playing games, whispers different names in your father's ear, Antonio, Martin, Edwin, Jose Luis, and after it's uttered 1,000 others, after it tells him in so many languages that the ground will soon consume his body, it fills the horizon with mirages, prompts your father to see highways, cities, lights, ripe with opportunity, promises all of which disappear when the desert wills a storm, and then, as if to see him question his sanity even more, places an umbrella near, which of course your father reaches for, but which the desert pulls away farther, farther, until it begins to rain, and all your father can do is pray that when it floods, the desert will show mercy, cast him to a place his body can endure. El Paraguas. The collection of poetry that I want to mention is Ada Limon's The Caring. There is a poem in that collection. I will link that in the description box because I am blanking out on the name of that poem, and I shouldn't because that was a poem that I submitted for the poetry party that Allie from A Genteel Black Hole is hosting, and I recorded that poem for Allie, and I can't remember. Can't remember the name of the poem, but I'll link it in the description box. It's a great poem. I won't read it here because I've already recorded it for Allie and the poetry party, and I want to leave it for that. So that is all I have to share for this episode of Poetry Thursday or Thursday Night Poetry, Hispanic Heritage Month edition. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back again soon, hopefully. Hasta la próxima.